Hey everybody, what's going on? Helmlight here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk about kind of my hopes and dreams for patch 8.19. Now 8.18 will be going live this week. We already have server maintenance announced, so that will be this Wednesday when it will drop. And then 8.19 will probably start hitting the PvE. I would guess tomorrow the initial changes will come out. We already had the teasers for the brand new Odyssey skins come out. Very excited for those. But the actual changes will start being uploaded likely on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. Now, 8.19 is a big deal because it is the patch that Worlds is going to get played on. So this is essentially where the meta is kind of going to be locked in place for the World scene, for a lot of the Gauntlet. And so it's going to be, the changes that are in this patch are going to be very important to the professional scene. Now, I know I normally cover regular community stuff, so this is a bit of a departure from what I normally look at. But I did want to talk about Worlds because it is the biggest tournament of the year, and Worlds also tends to have a very large impact on what does and does not see play in regular play during the time, because Worlds is a very long tournament. People have a lot more awareness that Worlds is happening. They watch a lot more of the games, and they kind of say, oh, the pros are playing X, Y, and Z. I want to play X, Y, and Z. So 8.19 therefore has a lot more expectations and hopes riding on it, and a lot of things that I think people are really hoping that Riot either do or don't do in the coming patch. So today's post, I just wanted to talk about my personal wish list of changes for 8.19, generally speaking focused on professional play and on World's viability, but they do have applicability to regular play as well, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. First and foremost, Kai'Sa needs nerfs. I think in regular play, Kai'Sa is generally fine. I don't see people do that much, have that much trouble with her. But I think that in general, her Worlds performances and her professional performances, especially of late, have been way too strong for her to not be considered for nerfs. I think most everybody, in most every region, Kai'Sa is pretty much a pick ban. Even if she's not banned, she's like a guaranteed pick to come out. And generally speaking, it's because Kai'Sa's laning phase isn't terrible. It's very hard to capitalize on her having a significantly weak early game. She just kind of is able to farm it up no matter what you do. And once Kai'Sa has sufficiently farmed up, she just becomes an unkillable tanking threat that has a lot of strengths. She has really good poke just in general because she's able to pretty much spam WF cooldown and really chunk people out because of the bonus plasma damage that she gets on top of that. Her current builds tend to favor hybrid, which means that Kai'Sa doesn't have a lot of weaknesses because she can kind of shred you no matter what defenses you have built up. And it also means that her W is going to chunk you even harder because she does have the AP enough to get the evolution involved. She's able to get the plasma procs a lot more quickly because usually the hybrid build involves Rageblade, and it ends up in a situation where Kai'Sa is the de facto pick, and she's not even really that risky of a pick because yes, she does have short range, but the biggest strength Kai'Sa has is her ultimate killer instinct, which really lets her just kind of ignore the fact that she has weak range by giving her a hugely valuable defensive tool. Now, champions like Xayah also has a very powerful defensive ultimate that can keep her safe, but because of her general immobility outside of that one ability, sure, she goes untargetable, but she doesn't move any faster than she normally does when on the ground, so you can still pin her in place with something like a Jarvan the Fourth ultimate or Camille ultimate. It doesn't keep her safe forever, as she does have, she's in the same spot as before, whereas Killer Instinct has the advantage of getting Kai'Sa to a place where it can be disconcerting for the enemy team. She gets a frankly gigantic shield and then can continue DPSing, especially with the isolation damage on her Q. So I think in general, Kai'Sa needs to be nerfed as she does have a kind of chilling effect on bottom lane. I think that Kai'Sa pretty much just gets played, which I think is a big disadvantage. It spoils a lot of the interest in watching the draft because you know if she's up, she's going to get first picked by somebody. So I think I would love to see Kai'Sa nerf just to give more viability to other marksmen along the lines. Similarly, I want hybrid itemization being nerfed, and if hybrid itemization gets nerfed, I'm fine with leaving Kai'Sa as she is because I think that that's sort of a direct nerf to her. That's her best build. She doesn't really benefit from crit as much as other marksmen do. But I would like hybrid itemization to be nerfed because hybrid marksmen have been pretty much the go-to marksmen throughout this season. I think it's pretty much been Varus and Kai'Sa and other Rageblade carries across the board who are the strongest champions that everyone wants to be playing in the bottom lane. And it's because of a lot of the reasons I already kind of talked about, where you just become incredibly strong. You have lots of target agnostic damage. Tanks can't deal with you very effectively because you have so much mixed damage. You pretty much eviscerate carries because carries have no way they can really itemize defensively. And Rageblade, I think, in general, is a bit of an overtuned item. I've been saying it for a while now, but I think Rageblade really does need either another significant rework or needs to be removed from the game because it just really allows champions to abuse on hit effects like no other. So I would love that to be nerfed. And along those regards, I would like to see the efficiency of Rage Blade reduced again, so it's weaker as a rush item. You really want it as more of a third item in a build, as opposed to the second or even first that you see most champions building it nowadays, in order to make it so that hybrid carries have significantly longer to go before they can really start shredding targets. That way they don't kind of come out the gate with a Rage Blade and are immediately the priority on the enemy team. So would love to see those changes, and I think that once hybrid carries are nerfed, there will be a lot more variety in the bottom lane. I think that just their overall strength in both lane and in late game team fighting is what really makes them incredibly strong. And so I would love to see some kind of change to make it so that if they're removed, that then other carries can start seeing play. Obviously, Tristana is already a champion that is seeing play in both North American and European LCS, but I would also love some traditional staples like Ashe to start coming back. She's starting to see a little bit of play as well. I would love to see her crop up more. Caitlyn, even Draven games. I remember a couple of teams have picked Draven unsuccessfully to try and shut down a Kai'Sa early game, so I would love to see Draven have a little bit more of a spot in the meta dealing with these kind of late game carries, and with the item efficiency nerf to hybrid itemization, I think Draven would be a really good counter pick to these hybrid carries, as they would have to suffer for even longer before they can become as strong as they currently are. Moving on to a couple other changes, Akali, I personally think is fine, but she's been like 100% pick ban through the North American Championship tournament. Nobody has pretty much been allowed to play Akali. I think she's been picked like once or twice, but really not as much as I think would be appropriate. I really think Akali is totally fine. I don't think it's that big of a deal to see her play. But she is super high priority in professional play, so I think some kind of change needs to be made, as obviously the pros are finding a ton of success on her, even if regular solo queue heroes aren't finding as much success on the champion. So I would love to see some kind of change to kind of diversify the mid lane pool, because with so many automatic bans in professional play, it gets really disappointing to see sort of the same picks come out over and over, because you can't change your bans. You still have to ban the Akali, you still have to ban potentially the Varus or the Kai'Sa, which then lets the enemy team play them if they so choose, which then means you end up with very similar drafts. And I think that's why having the Akali no longer be a priority pick would be a good change for the world's meta. I think the biggest change you could make would be potentially reducing the duration on Twilight Shroud, but I think that might nerf her too hard for regular solo queue play. So instead, I was thinking it would be interesting to have nerfs to her ability damage while buffing her passive damage. It makes it a lot harder, therefore, for Akali to just kind of press every button and kill you. She needs to be going in and out to get the passive procs, get more Assassin's Mark auto attacks off in order to actually get her damage down, as opposed to right now where she just kind of hits every button and still usually has enough damage to kill you even with only one Assassin's Mark proc. So I think it would be a good way to reduce Akali's strength, make her less of a priority pick, make her less of a strong pick, and give potentially more viability for other bans. I don't think she has a chilling effect on mid lane. I think mid lane is actually very, very healthy at the moment. There's a lot of really good things going on in mid lane, so I wouldn't want to see that change too much, but I do think Akali needs to be nerfed in order to open up ban spots. Moving on to kind of talk about ban spots, Gragas and Sejuani. Surprising no one, they're back to being the best jungle picks, to the point where if one of them is left open, they pretty much get played. Gragas, especially because of his ability to be flexed to the bottom lane as a support pick. He's been pretty potent in the hands of more than a few professional support players, so you don't have to play him in the top lane if you really don't want to. And Sejuani, obviously, if she's left open, gets played more often than not. She hasn't been as much of a priority, but I think she still is almost too strong to merit being strong going into Worlds, because it'll just end up being another meta where it's Gragas +1. In this case, the +1 is Sejuani. I think the biggest weakness that both of them need is they need to have less consistent early gank pressure, or just in general weaker early clears, so that while they can still be incredibly potent ganking machines, that they don't clear quite as fast or quite as healthy, so that way other junglers can abuse them. I think that might have the side effect of raising Olaf in professional play, but I think Olaf has enough weaknesses where if he doesn't get ahead, Olaf isn't worth very much, whereas if Gragas or Sejuani fall behind, they're still useful for a whole lot of different things. So Olaf is a bit of a risky pick. I don't think he'd become an immediate, well, we have to pick Olaf because he's the only good jungler left. I think instead it becomes a lot more of a, well, do we still value Gragas and Sejuani to merit picking them, despite the fact that the enemy team could pick, let's say, an Olaf in response and really bully them out of their jungle? Or do we want to try and go for the Olaf and hope we can get him ahead? Or do we pick potentially a different jungler entirely and get something else going for us? I think both of those would be potential changes, and I think that if you reduce the strength of Gragas and Sejuani, that you end up in a much healthier jungle meta. I think in general, just need to find some way to make it so that they have weaker early clears. I think reducing Gragas's base attack speed is a good way of going about that, as outside of his abilities, he has to rely on auto attacks, and that makes him quite weak. Sejuani, I don't know what you would do except potentially bringing back the cooldown on permafrost stacking on large monsters, potentially making it so that it's slightly lower than it is against enemy champions, so you can still get more permafrost procs, get those bonus icebreaker damage against camps, so you can still clear somewhat fast, but it also means that you have longer to wait between your cooldowns, you're able to take more hits from blue buff and red buff, and in general reduces your early ability to farm up as Sejuani. Would love to see those changes come through. Finally, I did want to talk about this. Urgot has kind of started coming into the meta, especially over in Korea. He's, I believe, almost a pick ban champion, and I've been saying it for a while, but Urgot really has no native counter in the top lane. I think short of champions like Darius, and it's just because the shield and damage you get on Purge makes it very difficult to trade with him, as all he has to do is just press W as you walk at him. He gets a bunch of essentially free damage. He has a lot of good single target damage. Getting the flip into all of the shotgun blasts can absolutely chunk people out, and on top of that, teams have been running Urgot alongside Cho'Gath to allow them to execute tanks from almost full HP, as a Cho'Gath feast into Fear Beyond Death almost assuredly is going to put the enemy tank down within range of the Fear Beyond Death's execute. So I do think that Urgot is quite strong. However, I don't think he's completely uncounterable. He hasn't even cropped up in North American LCS play. I believe he's been played once or twice in Europe, but teams have not even been prioritizing him. The Fnatic versus Schalke series yesterday, in fact, proved that. Soaz is known for wanting to play Urgot, but they did not pick Urgot at all, even when he became available in Game 3. So I don't think that's necessarily a priority for lots of teams, especially in the West. And I think that there are counters to it in abundance, especially given that if you play Urgot, you have to commit heavily to the split push composition and the split push style of play. If you have Urgot, you don't have the reliable initiation you can get out of tanks that you normally would be playing in the top lane. Someone like the Ornn, for example, or the Shen, or the Cho'Gath, which are going to be a lot more reliable for teams to play around. Sion even has come back in the meta, another strong pick that gives you the initiation potential you need. Urgot doesn't do that, because Urgot is never going to be that tanky. He's never going to, and he doesn't have any real way of starting a fight outside of maybe finding a flank and flash E-ing on top of a priority target. That's not really something Urgot can do, so you have to commit heavily to the split push. And while he's incredibly strong at the split push, I think that he does have weaknesses if you can isolate the enemy team into 4v5 scenarios or 4v4 scenarios where they don't have the Urgot. You have the ability to fight without him. And as far as split pushers go, Urgot doesn't split push that quickly. If you're thinking split pushers, someone like Nasus or Fiora, for example, do a much better job and a much quicker job and are more reliable in the sort of 1v1 scenario. And I don't think Urgot really does that. He is strong as a split pusher, but I think he lacks the sort of team fighting presence that other split pushers give to the team. And just in general, I think he has more exploitable weaknesses. He only has good single target damage, so in team fights, there's really not a lot Urgot can do. You might take a couple hits from Echoing Flames, but if you're not the one getting pounded away at by Purge, you're really not going to get chunked that low. Makes it difficult to get Fear Beyond Death procs off unless you can really open up holes in the enemy team. In general, I think he has sufficient counterplay and weaknesses, and he hasn't caught on at the rest of the world yet, which to me says that Urgot isn't that strong. Obviously regional metas do exist, and Korea tends to be the one that most other regions look at to sort of inform them as to what's good and what's not, especially in large-scale tournaments like Worlds. But I do think that even if Urgot started seeing prevalence at Worlds, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's been a long time since he has been in the meta. I think that if you pick Urgot, you give up on significant other strengths for your team, and in general, there's enough counterplay there that I wouldn't mind seeing him. So I hope Riot don't nerf Urgot in 8.19, because I do think that he's fine as is. Maybe slight tweaks, but I wouldn't want to see anything that completely removes him from the meta, because right now Urgot's one of the only non-tanks being played in the top lane. Every time we get Juggernaut seeing play, I think it makes for a very interesting meta where you sort of have an alternate carry in the top lane, and I would love to see him continue to see play. I am a little bit biased, but I will fully admit to that right now. So those are the biggest changes I would look at for 8.19 coming forward. Obviously, we'll get more details hopefully tomorrow, where we'll be able to look at that and see what Riot are actually planning for Worlds. But until then, we will have to speculate. Those are the biggest changes I'd like to see. Go ahead and let me know what changes you guys want to see in 8.19 down in the comments section below. I know there are a lot of people who have a lot of problematic picks or picks that they want to see get played at Worlds, so go ahead and let me know what you guys want in 8.19 down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're looking for more Grab the Lantern content, you can check out my blog, which is linked down in the description. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your enjoyment. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.